All right, so according to your book and what you read for today, what is the rhetorical function of appositive phrases? Now, I made this mistake in the first class, so let's rewind a little bit further. When I ask you that question, who knows what rhetorical function means? What does that phrase mean, rhetorical function?
How is it going to strengthen your argument?
Close. You're doing a little bit too much with it. Rhetorical function means, like, what is the purpose of something? So if I ask you what the rhetorical function of appositive phrases are, that means what is the purpose of the appositive phrase as you make your argument. If I ask you for the rhetorical function of the way in which the author uses inductive and deductive reasoning, I'm asking you, how does that inductive or deductive reasoning help make the argument better or clarify it? So when I ask you what is the rhetorical function of appositive phrases, that means I'm asking you what about appositive phrases? How they help a sentence make a point argument. Yeah. So the rhetorical function of appositive phrases, or if I'm asking you for the rhetorical function of a writer's sentence structure, you're looking at how the sentence structure helps the writer make a point or make an argument. So for appositive phrases, what is the rhetorical function of appositive phrases? There are 4 based on your reading for today. Feel free to look in your book. Specifically under the heading rhetorical purpose.
They can clarify.
Oh, yeah, they can clarify. What else can they do? Someone not named Rybecki? Now that's a stylistic function. The difference between a rhetorical function and a stylistic function is that rhetorically it clarifies. So that's how it helps me make my point, clarifies my point. Stylistically, using appositives smooth the sentence structure. Does that make sense? So it makes your sentence read more cleanly and makes it more easy to understand. What else can it do?
Explain.
It can what?
Explain.
Oh yeah, it sure can. What else can it do? Someone not named Rybecki or Cook. Miss Cam? Ooh, yes. That's kind of explain. Get more specific. One more.
D.
Yep. No, not you.
Fine.
Yeah, define. Good job, Whitwell. All right. So rhetorically, appositive phrases help clarify something, explain something, get more specific about something, and define something. Now, these words on their surface seem like there's quite a bit of overlap. Do you define and clarify at the same time? Is that a thing? Yeah. Is it a thing to get more specific and to explain? Yeah. Is it a thing to get more specific and define? Yeah. There's a lot of overlap here. But for the sake of what we're doing right now, I want you to try to figure out what is the difference between clarifying something and explaining something. What's the difference between getting more specific and defining? Now, because these things can overlap, however, words are important, and these words aren't just synonyms for each other. So we want to understand the subtle differences. You know, an appositive does what? You have a nugget of information. Okay, so here's our information nugget. The eye of knowledge. Okay, so here's our information nugget. What does it mean to clarify, and how is that different than explaining? How would clarifying my nugget be different than explaining my nugget?
Maybe you can use examples, kind of further expand it, not explain it. I don't know.
You're 100% on the right track, okay? But have not fully expressed the thought clearly yet. So you started with what? Using an example, right? How would using an example be more clarifying than explaining?
If you can compare it to something.
You're comparing it to something that's more relatable or understandable for your audience, and so therefore it's clarified. Whereas explaining, how is that different than clarifying?
Because I still don't know what it is.
So if I'm clarifying, my information nugget is confusing, or it's a hard concept, or it's a big idea, and I need to clarify that big idea. Okay? If I'm explaining something, how is that different than clarifying? Anybody? Don't worry about being right on the first time. We just got to get stuff out there and talk through it here, team. It's important, though, that we understand the subtle but important differences between these four words.
Just provide more information on the information nugget. By like giving it more of like a logical reasoning, like this is how it works or something.
This is how it works. So if you're explaining something, you explain how something works. If you're clarifying something, you're trying to make something more understandable. Can those two things overlap from time to time? Yes, and that's fine. But clarify means, and when writers do this, they try to provide clarity, so make something simple to understand. Here, I'm explaining how something works. How does it mean, or what does it mean to get more specific? More details, right? Okay, so you could be like describing something. I could get more specific. Hey, welcome to my farm, comma, a pasture that is 380 acres full of cow poop. Okay, so there I have gotten more specific about what my farm is like. And then the easiest one, what does it mean to define? Yeah, give the definition. So now can define and clarify be the same thing? Kinda. Clarity, though, this is a longer appositive phrase. When you're defining something, you're literally just giving the definition. However, when you're clarifying something, your positive phrase might need to take on more weight because what you're talking about is very difficult to understand. So again, to clarify means you have something that's difficult to understand and you provide clarity. Maybe make a comparison to make it easier to understand. To explain something means to explain how something works or the steps in a process. To get more specific means to provide more detail about something that is vague, and to define means to define. No shroud of mystery there. Do you understand, class, the difference between these four words and how that relates to the nugget of information? Okay, what I want you to do is write 4 sentences. Your first sentence needs to clarify something. Your second sentence explain. Your third, get more specific, and your fourth sentence, define. You need to make sure when you're writing these sentences that your first one, the thing that you're doing an appositive for, has to be a complex, hard idea. You get to decide what's complex or hard, but it can't be, you're not going to clarify to me what a dog is, right? You guys are what, 16, 17, 18 years old, right? We all know what a dog is. So what would be a hard idea for somebody to understand in your age bracket? What would be something that needs to be explained in your age bracket to me? I am your audience. What is something that you need to write about that gets more specific so I can understand? What is something you need to define so that your audience can understand it? Does that make sense? Okay, so I am your audience. You need to write 4 sentences. Think about what would you need to clarify for me? What would you need to explain to me? What would you need to get more specific about to me? What would you need to define to me? Think about if you are somebody who's into, was I talking to you in the resource room one day about weird music?
I wasn't here, but yes.
Do you remember what it was? It was like, or maybe it was mid-broad.
That was both of us.
Yeah. What was that music type? It had like a really weird genre.
I think it was like,
Country death metal or something?
yeah, country death metal yodeling.
Country death metal yodeling. You could write 4 sentences about country death metal yodeling, right? Because I don't know much about that. You know, your text lingo, you know, whatever you guys are into that you could write about gardening. Okay? So figure out what you want to write about and then craft these 4 sentences. Your first one needs to clarify, second, explain, third, get more specific, fourth, define. Got it? All right. Ready, set, go. Let's say you have about 10 minutes to get these sentences cranked out. We get over at 9:50, right? Yep. Yep. So that's about 2 or 3 minutes per sentence.